first signal came without warning. It was not a distress call, not a demand, not even a threat. It was just a single sentence repeated in every known language of the galaxy. We will not return. It reached every planet, every station, every listening post. There were no explanations, no further transmissions. After the message played once, the channel went dead. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, the 12 alien representatives sat in confusion. Some laughed openly. Humans are finally giving up, said the delegate from the Dravok Empire, a scaled giant with teeth like daggers. Perhaps they finally understand they are too small for the galaxy. Others nodded, but not everyone was convinced. Elder Shivari, a soft-spoken scholar from the Aurelian worlds, leaned forward. Silence is not weakness, not from humans. Her voice trembled. I have studied their history. When humans stop talking, something follows. Still, the council dismissed her warning. Out in the deep trade routes, reports started to come in. Human ships were leaving, not retreating in battle, but simply departing. Merchant convoys that had been part of the busiest lanes were gone. Their space stations, once noisy with activity, were shut down. Markets closed. Homes abandoned. On the mining moon of Varus 9, alien dockworkers watched as an entire human colony boarded ships without a single word to their neighbors. They did not pack belongings. They did not say goodbye. They just walked away, faces expressionless, eyes forward. In the observation decks of alien stations, the view was eerie. The great human cargo haulers and warships left one after another, their navigation lights dimmed. To an observer, they looked like shadows slipping into the void. It's a political stunt, the Varlian ambassador scoffed in the council. They want attention. But deep inside the Central Archives, and a hidden meeting took place. Senior intelligence officers from 5 alien nations gathered around a holomap. It showed a chilling truth. Human fleets were not just leaving, they were gathering. Slowly, quietly, they were converging toward the Sol system. Captain Lorvek of the Zephyrin Defense Force frowned. It's like they're folding their entire species back to their homeworld. But why? No one had an answer. In a small refugee bar on the outer rim, an old, battle-scarred alien nursed a drink. His name was Krial, a veteran of the Third Frontier War. When he overheard younger soldiers joking about the humans running away, he slammed his cup down so hard the table cracked. You fools think this is retreat, he growled. I fought them. I saw what they do when they are silent. Last time, they wiped an entire fleet without firing a shot. They took our ships apart in the dark and left the pieces floating. We never even saw them. The young soldiers laughed at him, but Krial's hands shook as he remembered the cold emptiness of that battlefield. Weeks passed. No human voices were heard. Their communication networks went offline. Their colonies stood empty, and then the Sol system vanished from all galactic charts. Every scanner, every probe, every spy satellite returned the same result. Nothing. It was as if the entire human home system had been swallowed by darkness. The council called it a technical error. They assured the public there was no danger. Trade routes would continue. Life would go on. But in the silence of space, something was moving. On a deserted listening post near the edge of human space, 2 alien technicians watched their sensors. One of them noticed a shadow on the readings. Large, irregular, and moving at impossible speed. Probably an asteroid, the senior technician muttered, but as they watched, the shadow split into hundreds of smaller signatures. Each one was massive, fast, and heading outward in all directions. The younger technician leaned closer to the screen. Those are ships. No transponders, no lights, no transmissions. And when they passed the station, every system in the outpost went dead. Lights, life support, everything. For 2 minutes, there was nothing but darkness. When the systems flickered back on, the ships were gone. Far away, on the council's homeworld, Elder Shivari stood by her window, staring at the night sky. She could not explain why, but she felt a weight in her chest, as if the air itself had grown heavier. She whispered to herself, "They are not gone. They are preparing." No one heard her, but somewhere in the dark between stars, humanity was waiting. The first black cube appeared on a cold, windswept colony at the edge of the Reinar sector. It was left in the middle of the central plaza sometime during the night. No one saw who placed it there. No cameras caught anything. It was simply there when the sun rose. At first, the colonists thought it was art, some kind of strange human sculpture. It was smooth, perfect in shape, and blacker than any material they knew. It did not reflect light. It seemed to swallow it. Then it activated. A single beam of pale blue light shot upward into the sky, carrying with it a message in every known language. Judgment has been passed. The voice was not mechanical. It was human, calm, even gentle. But there was something in its tone that froze the hearts of everyone who heard it. The cube spoke no more. 3 days later, the colony's communication towers melted from the inside out. No explosions, no attacks, just sudden, silent failure. Every system that could send or receive a signal was dead. They were cut off from the galaxy. At the Galactic Council, the incident was reported with mild concern. A human prank, declared the Zephyrin representative, perhaps a warning to stay out of their space. But Admiral Sorvak of the Talari Republic shook his head. Humans do not send warnings unless they mean them. Across the galaxy, more cubes appeared. One floated into the docking bay of a mining station without tripping a single alarm. Another was found inside the throne room of the Torvak Emperor, though the palace was guarded by 1,000 soldiers. Each cube spoke the same phrase, "Judgment has been passed." Still, the majority of alien leaders mocked the idea that humanity could be a threat. After all, they had left. They were gone. But not everyone was laughing. In a hidden chamber deep beneath the council's main hall, a small group of intelligence agents met in secret. They had been tracking the cube's appearances and noticed something terrifying. Every location was tied to an old war against humanity. Colonies that once hosted human refugees but turned them away. Worlds that had voted for war in the council decades ago. Mining stations that had cut off human supplies during famine. "This is a list," one agent whispered, her eyes wide. "These are executions waiting to happen." Meanwhile, in the outer rim, a freighter captain named Kelro was hauling medical supplies when he passed through a supposedly abandoned human sector. "Nothing here but ghosts," his co-pilot joked. But Kelro frowned. His long-range scanner showed faint heat traces, hundreds of them, surrounding his ship. They weren't asteroids, they weren't debris, they were moving, in perfect formation. He tried to send a signal, but his comms went dead. For 5 long minutes, the shadows followed, never getting closer, never falling back. Then, without a sound, they vanished. When Kelro docked at the nearest port, he found a small black cube sitting in his cargo bay. It said nothing. Back on the council homeworld, Elder Shivari sat in the archives staring at an ancient file, a recording from a forgotten war. It showed human ships moving through enemy space without being seen, striking at the heart of fleets before anyone knew they were there. The file ended with a line she could not forget. "If humans go silent, prepare for the storm." As the first black cube appeared inside the council chamber itself, the entire galaxy felt the first drop of rain. Commander Vorsk of the Dravok Empire had no patience for ghost stories. To him, the black cubes were nothing more than human tricks, psychological warfare meant to frighten weaker species, and so he decided to make a statement. His plan was simple: take his fleet into abandoned human space, seize an old outpost, and broadcast the victory across the galaxy. He believed that once everyone saw the humans' weakness, the council would stop whispering about judgment. The target was an old human supply station orbiting a dead moon. Scanners showed no life signs. The outpost had been abandoned for years, perfect for a public spectacle. The fleet of 20 warships arrived without resistance. No defense drones, no patrols, just an empty station slowly turning in the cold dark. "See?" Vorsk said to his bridge crew. "Cowards. They have run from the galaxy and they leave their toys behind." Boarding parties moved in, their boots echoing in the hollow corridors. They reported dust, silence, and the faint hum of old power cells. Then one team entered the central control room. There was no crew, no weapons, only a single chair in the middle of the room. On it sat a black cube. Before anyone could move, the cube activated. The voice spoke. Fleet identified. Verdict: guilty. In the next second, every ship in Vorsk's fleet lost power. Lights went out, engines died, life support failed. Panic spread through the comms. "Sir, all systems are—" The voice of a young pilot cut off mid-sentence, replaced by static. From the command ship's viewport, Vorsk watched in horror as something moved in the darkness outside, shapes so black they seemed to erase the stars behind them. They were massive, silent, and impossibly fast. One by one, his warships vanished into the dark. No explosions. No debris. They were simply gone. Vorsk ordered a retreat, but his ship would not move. When his systems flickered back to life, he found himself alone. 19 ships had vanished without trace. His crew was silent, staring ahead with eyes pale and unblinking, their mouths slightly open as if frozen mid-breath. Somehow, Vorsk survived long enough to be found drifting near the edge of human space. When rescue crews pulled him aboard, he said only one thing before collapsing: they were never gone. News of the incident spread fast. The council tried to contain it, but whispers traveled faster than official reports. Merchants abandoned routes near human borders, small colonies locked down in fear. In the shadows of uncharted space, humanity's fleets were gathering. Thousands of warships moved in patterns no alien could predict, forming into massive, silent armadas. They did not send warnings, they did not answer calls. But from the few surviving recordings, one thing was clear. Each fleet carried the same insignia, a black circle with a single pale blue line through its center. The line was straight, sharp, and final, a judgment mark. The first attack did not look like an attack. It began with a whisper through the Galactic news channels, reports of a weapons research facility on the moon of Caldra going dark. No explosions were detected, no distress calls were sent. One moment, it was active. The next, it was gone. When a salvage crew was sent to investigate, they found the entire facility still standing, but hollow. Every piece of machinery, every computer core, every weapon, gone. Stripped away with surgical precision. The walls were smooth, as if nothing had ever been built inside. The only thing left was a black cube in the command center. This one did not speak. It only displayed a single glowing word in pale blue: guilty. The Council dismissed it as sabotage from a rival faction. But the next day, 3 more facilities fell. One in the Torvak Empire, one in the Varlian Federation, one in the Dravok Core Worlds. The pattern was terrifying. Every strike hit a high-security military target. There were no civilian casualties, no collateral damage, just complete erasure of the target and everyone inside. Satellite footage from the Torvak incident was the first real clue. For less than half a second, a shadow appeared over the facility before the feed went black. Analysts slowed the footage down, frame by frame. What they saw was not a shadow. It was the outline of a massive human dreadnought, larger than anything on record, hovering silently, without visible engines, without light. It vanished before the image could sharpen. Admiral Tarek of the Varlian Defense Council clenched his claws as he replayed the footage again and again. "They're not fighting a war," he muttered. "They're delivering a sentence." Panic began to ripple through the galaxy. Council members accused each other of hiding human alliances. Some worlds started evacuating their leaders to deep space. Then came the most chilling strike of all. On the fortified moon of Kithra, the alien garrison prepared for a human attack after spotting unknown signals in the outer orbit. They armed every defense turret and charged planetary shields to full power. The humans never fired. Instead, every single weapon on the moon fired once, not at the humans, but at the moon's own shield generators. No one could explain how it happened. Within seconds, the shield collapsed and the human ships, still silent, descended. Minutes later, the moon's command center transmitted one final message to the council: "They're inside." Then Kithra went dark. Across the galaxy, leaders began to realize the truth. The humans weren't reclaiming lost territory. They weren't fighting for resources. They were erasing enemies from history. Grand Marshal Korvac of the Torvak Empire had built his reputation on fearlessness. No enemy had ever made him hesitate, and certainly not humans, especially now when they had vanished from the galaxy. His plan was bold: take the largest coalition fleet in Council history straight into the Sol system, broadcast their arrival live to every world, and prove once and for all that humanity's silence was nothing but a bluff. 127 warships jumped to the edge of the system, weapons armed, shields glowing. But what they found was not the empty graveyard they expected. Before them stretched a wall of black, dozens upon dozens of massive dreadnoughts, their hulls darker than space itself. They had no running lights, no visible weapons. They simply floated in perfect formation between the alien fleet and Earth. No transmissions came, no hails were answered. Korvac sneered. "Advance!" The coalition fleet moved forward, engines flaring. And that's when every single alien vessel received the same incoming message, audio only in a human voice. "You came here by choice." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even loud. But every soldier on every ship felt the weight of those words. Still, Korvac gave the order to fire. A wall of plasma, missiles, and beam fire screamed toward the human line, enough firepower to turn a moon into dust. Not a single shot landed. The human ships didn't dodge. They didn't activate shields. The weapons simply vanished mid-flight, dissolving into harmless sparks. Before the coalition fleet could recover, the human dreadnoughts moved. Not forward, not back, just sideways in patterns no alien ship could match, breaking formation only to reform again at impossible speed. When they opened fire, it wasn't with beams or missiles. It was with silence. Ships at the edges of the coalition fleet simply winked out of existence, erased from scanners, comms, and memory. Crew members on surviving ships found entire sections missing as if they had never been built. Korvac screamed orders, but his voice was drowned out by the sound of his own ship's hull tearing apart without any heat or shockwave. In less than 4 minutes, the coalition fleet was gone. One single alien scout vessel, badly damaged, was allowed to leave. Its captain, pale and shaking, sent one final transmission before the ship's comms went dead. They never left. And for the first time, the Galactic Council realized Sol was not just humanity's home. It was the heart of their judgment. Total annihilation, it began in silence, as all of humanity's moves now did. Across the galaxy, in every sector that had once voted for war against Earth, the night sky changed color. The stars themselves seemed to flicker, then burn red. Not from any natural phenomenon, but from the reflections of thousands of human warships descending. There was no declaration of war, no demand for surrender. In the capital city of the Varlian Federation, children playing in the streets froze as the daylight dimmed. When they looked up, the sky was filled with black shapes, each one the size of a small continent drifting silently overhead. The soundless shadows stretched from horizon to horizon. On the Torvak frontier world of Drax Gate, soldiers scrambled to their posts. The air filled with the mechanical hum of charging weapons, and every defense system on the planet came online. But not a single one fired, because their targeting systems showed nothing. To the computers, there was nothing in orbit. And then, the human ships opened fire. It was not the chaotic exchange of ordinary battles. Every strike was precise, surgical, and final. Planetary defense grids vanished in pinpoint bursts. Command centers were erased in seconds. Orbital shipyards disintegrated without a single piece of debris falling to the surface, and yet civilians were untouched. In a strange calculated mercy, humanity's fleets avoided cities, farms, and population centers. They left the people alive but powerless, their leaders gone, their infrastructure dismantled. On every world struck, a black cube appeared in the center of the capital. The cube spoke the same sentence in that calm, terrible voice. Your leaders brought this. In the Dravak Empire's war capital, the Emperor himself watched as his fleet, 200 warships strong, was torn apart above the palace. The ships didn't explode, they simply ceased to exist. as if they had been erased from reality. The Emperor fled to the deepest vault beneath the city, believing himself safe. He was wrong. When he reached the final chamber, a black cube was waiting on the command table. Verdict delivered, it said, and then everything went dark. Within 72 hours, the campaign was over. Dozens of worlds had lost their militaries. Entire sectors were leaderless. In the council chamber, representatives shouted over each other, demanding answers, calling for peace, begging for negotiations. But there was nothing to negotiate. Humanity had already decided, and somewhere, far beyond the edge of the known maps, their fleets turned toward their next targets. The galaxy had gone quiet. Trade lanes once busy with cargo traffic now lay empty. The chatter of open comm channels had faded to static. Planets that had burned with the noise of industry now sat in eerie stillness. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, only half the seats were filled. The rest were vacant, representatives dead, in hiding, or too afraid to appear. Those who remained argued in low, desperate voices, but none dared to speak of retaliation. Then, without warning, every display screen in the chamber flickered, the lights dimmed, and a black cube appeared in the center of the council floor. Unlike the others, this cube did not glow blue. It glowed white, casting long, sharp shadows across the room. A voice filled the air, human, calm, and steady. It was the voice of a child. "We wanted peace. You chose otherwise." The delegates froze. "You struck first. You called it justice. You called it survival. You called it inevitable." A pause. The glow of the cube brightened until it painted every alien face with stark light. "Now we have called our own verdict." Images began to appear in the air. Worlds where military fleets once ruled, now stripped bare. Fortresses reduced to dust. Battle stations erased. But in every image, civilians stood untouched, looking up at the sky in silence. The child's voice continued, "We are not your enemies. We are your memory." The cube went dark. For 3 heartbeats, the chamber was silent. Then, every communications device in the galaxy activated at once, broadcasting the same short transmission to every living being. "Judgment is over. We will not speak again." And just like that, humanity vanished from the stars. Scouts sent to the Sol system found only darkness. No ships, no stations, no trace of human life. Some believed they had left the galaxy entirely. Others whispered they were still here, hidden, watching. But on the farthest edge of known space, a lone explorer swore she saw them. Massive black ships drifting between the stars, engines cold, waiting for a reason to move again. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy learned to live with a truth far more terrifying than war. Humans were gone, but they could come back.